Welcome. So about us, this is John, Geekspeed, Stauffacher. I'm Matt Hoy at Matrix, and yeah, we have Alphabet and stuff. Want to explain this?
Thank you, Matt. Yes, for all you who are watching at home after DerbyCon and you want to use the rest of these slides to present something to management, the next slide is what we have provided to get you to that point. We're thought leaders providing thought leadership, so this is the get out of jail free card you have to implement anything we say after the slide, and your management will eat it up. Oh, I'm sorry. So why are we here today? Why are we taking time out of your day at DerbyCon to sit here and talk about incident response? We want to go over where we have failed and those things that we get, the mindsets we get into, that we start thinking more about protecting our own selves and less about protecting our company. When we talk about risk assessment and those dangerous mindsets, we talk about what I like to refer to as a premature foothold. We sit down and we talk about, well, this is one acceptable point in our application that we have failed, but you know what? We'll take on that risk. What does that mean? When you're starting to take away all of the high, medium risks, the critical risks, now you're left with all your low risk, your not so critical risk. Those just become open footholds for your attacker. Albert Einstein came up with an idea that you can't have the same collective intelligence driving your solutions. And in security, we tend to do that. We tend to sit down as a group and try to think of a way to mitigate a risk with the same collective intelligence that introduced the risk. And you need to take a step back and think about, is that best for business? Is it best to sit down with the people who created the problem and try to come up with an idea to solve it? Or is it better to reach out for new information, new intelligence, to create new ways to solve this problem?
Sorry. So basically, why did we go ahead and do this talk? I originally went ahead and did this talk to actually change the dynamic of what it is that we do in incident response. When I first started this journey on this talk, I basically was going, well, we have the basics of incident response, but what are we doing to actually fix anything? Not a whole heck of a lot. So some of the issues that I have is I've been engaged to go to a customer, and basically they had an issue, they had an incident, and I have to argue for 15 minutes as to this is an issue, this is an incident, but you've already been breached. So why is it that we're having this conversation? Why is it that we are arguing semantics that this is an issue, this is a breach, it is. So that's why I'm here, that's why I'm sitting with you. So we're going to go ahead and talk about things as far as moving forward.
So how do we move forward? How do we get beyond this idea of covering everything up, making sure that we never say the word incident, never say the word breach, never admit to our customers that maybe we have failed, get around the idea that we can collectively take in no input from the outside and try to solve our own problems? How do we get to the next level of incident response where we're taking appropriate action for what's going on? How do we clean up our own house and make it neat and then start going after our true enemies, our attackers? This quote right here is something that in my daily life I encounter much more than I should. A lot of times we get lulled into this idea that this is the way we've always done it. We've always done it. You know, it's time, it's tested. Right now, today, we need to start moving beyond that. We need to start thinking about new ways to solve problems, new ways to attack what is happening to us. Ouch. Welcome DEF CON parties, everybody. Thank you, sir. We took the moniker of a janitor and a cleaner. A janitor is one who's just content just to mop up the mess. The janitor comes in, they repatch the box, they throw it back out into production. They throw sawdust over the vomit on the floor, and they wipe it away. To us, that is the baseline. What do you do beyond that, though? Are you going after your attacker? Are you striking back? Do you even understand what is going on? Or are you just content to clean up what's going on and then move forward?
Apparently this mic works.
Oh, we would like to.
So the cleaner, it goes beyond just reimaging your items. You have to go ahead and not just throw boxes back up, reimage, throw it back up. We actually need to understand who the attacker is, what their vector is, and things like that.
So guys, which one do you want to be? Who are you? Do you guys want to be the guy who just mops up after the attack, moves on with daily life? Or do you want to be the one who understands what's going on and can make an effective response and mitigate those threats? So the fact that they're not going to come back.
So when you look at traditional incident response, it's pickerel, preparation, identification, containment, eradication, recovery, and lessons learned. I actually want to go above that. I want to go ahead and take a look at who the attacker is, who they are, understand my attacker, and on top of that, stop them.
So a couple of years ago, Lockheed Martin decided they'd run a study and figure out how exactly attacks happen. They came up with what we're seeing up here. Show of hands in the crowd who understands what this is or knows what this is. Great, awesome. I'm going to owe Viz $10 here, but I'm going to tell you, it's a cyber kill chain. This is the steps your attacker takes when he is actually attacking you. The higher up on this chain that we can hit, if we can get them up in their weaponized phase or even in reconnaissance, the more likely we are to stop their attack. If we're not understanding what's going on until they're at the command and control phase, we're screwed. It's important to understand where your enemy is at in this chain. Where are they at in their attack? Have they succeeded, or are they just now in the middle of that attack? Your chances to mitigate any threat greatly increase the higher up the chain you can get. So we tend to like to put things in small little boxes. We call them life cycles. We try to put an area of order around what people are doing. But the main point is that there is no order. We can kind of surmise what's going on, but most of these attacks are happening because of things that are outside of our control, outside of our even knowledge. They're driven by things that are greater of importance to the people attacking us than we give them credit for. We also find that these attacks exploit weaknesses in our business processes and in our own allegiances and ideals and how we operate on a daily basis. So let's start talking about preparation. How do we prepare ourselves for the attacks we're coming into, and how do we prepare ourselves to respond to what's going on today? I'm going to go through a list of what's not working today. We really don't understand who's attacking us. Some of us have an idea. We subscribe to these so-called threat intelligence feeds. We try to gain an idea of what's going on, but we really don't have a clear landscape of who our enemy is, why they're attacking us, and what they want from us. We don't really understand the nature of the attack. We understand the attacks as they happen. We understand what they're doing, but the true drivers behind it, the reasons why people are going after our stuff, is really not known. We have perfected what I like to call mall cop security. We love to put things in monitor mode. And I find this is one of the most interesting things I've encountered is we will spend $2-3 million on product and then set it just to log. Never really take any action. Just, throw it to a sim, and the sim will spit out an alert, and the alert will tell me that I have to go do something. It's analogous to the mall cop whose whole job is to observe and report. We don't want to be observing and reporting. Observing and reporting loses. We have found a trouble with staffing people. We want people to do everything and anything under the sun, and then security. We want our security guy to be the topmost expert in his field, but also change the printer toner. We all laugh because we've all been there. We've all seen the job descriptions. Some of you probably have written them. The idea that security is just one part of our job needs to get out of our vernacular. We need to understand that security is a job for a full-time person and can't be delegated to someone who also is in charge of refilling the soda machine. We let business drive. This is a big one too, is a lot of times in our daily jobs, we are faced with a decision of, do we let the business go forward or do we fix a security issue? So let's start talking about our enemy. Interesting thing about most of these groups that are actively attacking is they have amassed an organization that rivals most enterprises. They have all these same types of groups that we have in our businesses. They have a marketing department. They have to be able to sell their phones. They have to be able to sell their services. They have an operations department. They have to keep that shit rolling. They have to be able to take, the latest Zeus and re-roll it to get past whatever protection you have put in front of it. They have a development environment. They have coders working hard day and night to transform whatever you have caught with your latest IDS signature. They need to transform to get it past it. They have an accounting department that makes sure that these people get paid. When you're on the down low, you don't like not getting paid for your services. And they have an HR department to actually go for and vet these people. They run through interviews. They run through practical exams. It is not uncommon to find that these groups are taking people and putting them through the normal paces that you as an enterprise would put your own people through. The only problem is they pay a lot more. I've noticed with Zeus that the development is so efficient. They are taking days, if not hours, weeks to get releases out, whereas in our own companies, it may take us months. Their QA cycle is pretty quick. We are yet to match that in our defense cycle. They roll a variant out, and we're stuck waiting for our vendor to come up with patches. When Zeus actually had its code leaked, the source code leaked, they had variants that spun up within hours, and these development teams worked in tandem, releasing releases one right after the other. Some of the more interesting ones were LikeCat, in that they added P2P functionality and extended the operations of Zeus outside of what the original groups that controlled it had thought of. They added features to it as it went along and made it better and more worse than the original one, to the point where it rivaled what our own software engineers can do. This is people in our own field, probably working day and night, one on a commercial product, the other on this product, to add these things in record time. If you don't understand what that means to your defenses, it means that any signature you have is invalid after hours. So to go forward with that, that means that anything we have put up, that we have known, the updating your antivirus signatures, updating your IPS signatures, IDS, is thrown out the window because these people can react faster than we can get those samples over to the AV vendors to get signatures made, to get back into your systems. It means you need to be more proactively monitoring what's going on and understanding what's going on and taking your own steps to combat what's happening. So attackers have found this idea that any changes we put into the landscape, they want to counter. And it creates a sort of mind game with the attacker. You're creating a race condition by enumerating badness. Does anyone here understand what enumerating badness is? So in the early 2000s, there was a report released of the top 10 worst things in information security. And one thing was enumerating what's bad. We love doing this. Antivirus is a perfect example. We would love to take into account everything that's bad in the world. As most of you can understand, that's a very long list. And this creates a sort of game for your attacker. You block one thing they do, they get energized, they want to go do another. They start looking for that foothold. An easier approach to take is, why don't we just list out what all is good? The amount of good in our organization is a lot smaller than the amount of bad in our organization. And if we just assume that everything is bad except for what is good, we can have a smaller list of things to work on, right? Show of hands, anyone who agrees with me? I got one guy in the back. Thank you for listening. Face it, guys, your enemy is more motivated to attack you than you are to defend. We're talking about tens of thousands of dollars to crack what you have versus what you get paid in a day. That motivation is real. Maslow has proved of what motivates human beings on a visceral level to get stuff. And unfortunately, there's not enough cash and gold in the world to make you more motivated to defend than what your attacker has to attack. Were you calling for it? All right.
Just next.
So your enemy is more motivated to get than what you have to defend. And in this case, the honey badger don't care. It's your birthday. So how are we responding to these things? How are we responding to getting attacked? This is the more interesting things that I've come in contact with. First off, as I touched on earlier, enumerating badness. We have decided that it's okay just to enumerate all that is horrible in the world. IPSs, IDSs, WAFs, antivirus. We tend to really stick on listing out signatures of everything bad than really focusing on what is the small, good, known traffic that we have in our environment. It really would be easier if we just take down the whitelist approach of what our good traffic looks like and leave the rest to just assume that it's bad. Monitor mode. I love talking about this one. Show of hands, how many of you guys have IPS as a monitor mode? Come on, we're all friends here. Come on, I know it's more. I know see, there you go. We always hear the business driver that what if we block legitimate traffic with it in active mode? What if we actually stop a customer from making a sale? I combat that with what is the cost if we get breached? Is that one customer worth it? Is that 22 hours of me sitting there and making sure that our shit is clean really worth exposing yourself? Because let's face it, everything that's in monitor mode, we're not diligently staring at logs. I hate staring at logs. It makes my eyes bleed. I'd rather be doing other things. I'd rather do the equipment that I purchased do things for me that I purchased it for. So the Ponemon Institute did a study, and they found that we're trying to actively hire for security people, but it's just not really hitting the grade. And I started looking at it, and I'm wondering, well, why? Why would it make sense that we would want to protect our customers' data and not hire just regular people, but hire intelligent people to run our security programs? Unfortunately, I found out that traditionally companies spend more on their commissaries and their canteens than they do on information security. Let me put this in perspective. Companies spend more on fried chicken in the lunchroom than they do on protecting their customers' data. I'll let this sink in for a minute. We really don't understand how to hire. This is an example of a job listing. In there, in the middle there, I mean, if I had my laser pointer that worked, I would show you, there is security. This guy was hired as like the all-around dude for a major corporation. I'm pretty sure they were going to pay him about $60,000 to do everything, and then, yeah, security's in there somewhere. And these people said, hey, that checks the check off our box. We're PCI compliant now. So that seems pretty legit, right? Here's the qualifications they wanted to have. So to do all that and security, he only had to have these qualifications. This doesn't work, people. This really doesn't work. This doesn't build an effective security program when he has to deal with everything from servers to VoIP to fixing the personal computer of the CEO. This sort of hiring, this sort of not communicating what we need as a security organization to the company doesn't work. Yes, wait, what? See, they laugh for me. They're clued in. I'm waiting for Jason Street to come in here. He said he was going to. Everybody familiar with the 80-20 rule? Have you been spoke to it by management? Management loves to throw out this principle that 80% of your vulnerabilities come from 20% of the traffic, or 80% of your exploits, or 80% of your pwnage comes from 20% of the exploits. From my experience, 80% of secure still means you're not secure. So here's a management word problem for the managers out there. If you assume that 20% of the organization vulnerabilities account for 80% of the incidents, does that mean that if you just get rid of those small few 20%, that your incident rate's going to go down? Does that make sense? So in that 80%, where was Heartbleed? Where was that new shell shock one? Was that up there? Was Bash up on your top 10 of vulnerabilities in your environment? Were you even looking at Bash? This is where the 80% rule kind of falls apart. Because honestly, people, 80% secure still means that 20% of your environment is left wide open. What about that customer? What about that intern you had that took all that customer PII and left it on a subway? Was that in your vulnerability list? Did that make your top 80%, your top 20%? Was that even thought of in the meeting you had? Because it happens. Even at 80% secure, you're still 0% secure because that one breach you have is a zero-sum game. It's done. So let's not let numbers drive our security organization. Let's not let feelings drive our security organization. I was at a client once where they were kind of upset after an assessment, and they told me to shut down the machine because they didn't know how to deal with the information that was coming out of it. They couldn't adequately emotionally deal with that their enterprise was rife with issues. And they just want to shut it off, put it in a corner, and never talk about the incident again. That didn't solve anything. Worse, it exacerbated the problem because they never wanted to talk to me again. They were really upset at me for showing them what was going on in their environment. Yeah, exactly. Shame on me. I should never really give them bad news. I call this the ugly baby syndrome. It's when you tell someone their baby is ugly. I'm sorry. It's just a fact. We need to learn to deal with it. We need to learn to take it on the chin, realize that we need to do better in what we do. Don't take it so personally. Understand that this is just business.
Speaking of ugly babies, compliance is not security, guys. You can be 100% compliant, but not secure. And if you're not taking that stance that's nice that we're compliant, but what are we doing to really secure our area? Might as well not even worry about it. One of my other pet peeves is why quit being a pen tester. Last year's vulnerability assessment, I did the same banner grab I did last year and the year before. And the year before, I might as well just change the date and leave it the same report. Why are we doing this?
See, the people in the back laughing are the ones who actually do that. Let's talk about the fun stuff. What's that?
You do that just to make sure that they're paying attention.
That's it.
The problem is they're not.
So I'm sure many of you look up here and they're like, where'd you get these? These are actually posters sold by a company that wants to invigorate startups. I professionally love the fuck it, ship it. I have that one actually.
He has it, for real.
I have it in my office because whenever I'm doing a test on a client, I look over them like, yep, fuck it, ship it, dude. It's good. Or the other one I love is done is better than perfect, right? Because we all know that done out to customers means that it's totally secure. Unfortunately, these have garnered so much fame and attraction that people are printing them on posters and people are buying them and putting them in their dev shops and saying, dude, this is a mantra we must live after. You know, the longer it takes to develop, the less likely the clients are to engage. Come on, let's push it through. It may have vulnerabilities up through everywhere, but hey, at least it's out to the customer. These are a couple of quotes that I had in actual engagements, and I'm not going to list out the clients, but they are funny, but they are also a sad reminder of the state that people get into. The last one there, I love to talk to people about. The guy literally told me he only opens tickets he knows he can close. This is because the management staff there only captured his closed ticket rate, so he wanted to be 100% all the time. And unfortunately, some of these tickets he wasn't able to close.
So metrics is not security either, sadly, but everybody loves metrics.
So let's talk about how we respond to incidents, because I love going through this one too. University of Maryland, they're a great, great example of how not to respond. They were breached twice. After the first breach, they decided just to shore up the issue, close the port. They literally blocked the offending IP, and then they went on, and they got breached again. And this message down here was the message they sent out to everybody about what had happened, literally claiming that it was just an industry-wide issue that everyone just had to deal with. Maricopa County in Arizona, they're another fun one we like to look at. They didn't do anything. They literally got caught up in meetings and blame storming that they never really fixed the issue and got breached again. P.F. Chang's, their local Chinese eatery, decided to go to manual credit card processing in their breach release. Do you know what that does to everybody out here who likes to dive through dumpsters? It means the company that couldn't protect their POS systems is now dumping carbons in their trash can. These guys, all of them, last 2 years, all of them in some way had a POS system breached. The fun ones in there is Jimmy John's, who had theirs administratable via the internet. You see, there are certain precautions we take because we are security people. There are certain things that we all say that you need to do, and then there's the business side of the house. The business side of the house usually dictates what we actually do, and that's where it needs to stop. I'm pretty sure there was a number of people at all these institutions that raised their hand and said, you know what, we can't do this, it's not safe. And they overridden by something else. So how do we change all this? How does this stuff we've just walked through, this painful memory, how does it change? 2014, the Ponemon Institute went through a study on just SQL injection. They found that 65% of the companies have suffered a SQL injection attack in the last year. Out of that, it took 140 days to detect, 65 days to remediate. I can do math. That is 208 days that vulnerability left open. Let that sink in for a minute. That is over 2/3 of a year. One thing we found that people are not doing is attaching some real monetary value to incidents. Our execs, our C-level execs, they only speak in money. They want to know how much money is it going to cost and how much money is it going to save you. As IT people, we talk in vulnerabilities, we talk in esoterics. We need to bridge that gap and start talking about money. How does the money play into it? How much money do they need to spend to keep us from having to shell out money? It's a pretty simple formula that even the highest level manager can understand. You got to take the cost of the solution versus the cost of an adverse event versus the cost of doing nothing. The cost of doing nothing is a hard one, right? Because you've been doing nothing all this time and you really don't know if you've been breached. It's not a fun game to play, but it's something that needs to be done. You need to put this down, throw it into dollars, and then come up with a solution that you can bring to management. Fortunately, Symantec already did you a good favor. They have a website that you can go to. You plug in the numbers, and it spits out everything you need to know. We need to stop enumerating badness. We need to really adopt the zero trust model as Forrester Research first presented. And this model is pretty simple. You don't trust anything, and you verify everything. Makes sense, right? We know what our good traffic is. We know what good traffic looks like. Why are we allowing bad traffic? Let's just assume that everything is bad and only what we know is good is allowed through. We need to respond appropriately. We need to understand that our customers are not idiots. They understand just as we do. Let's get rid of the doublespeak. Let's get rid of the blame shifting. And let's own up to what we did and provide a true path to an area that is not vulnerable, to where we're not putting our customers at risk. Let's stop saying that we care about privacy when we put our POS systems on the internet. Let's understand that everything is in scope. When we start taking away the threat surface, we're now making the small, little, minor things now major things, because that's the only thing available. If the only thing available to your attacker is a low severity issue, he's going to take a crowbar to that issue and try to find a way to make that a big issue. Look at that, I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's start fixing stuff. As Matrix alluded to earlier, we love to present the same report every year in and year out, and no one really ever fixes anything. It's fun to run a vuln scan, it's fun to pen test, but it is less fun to sit down in the trenches and actually remediate these issues so they don't come up again and again and again. We'd like to pawn it off as somebody else's issue. Let's take it upon ourselves to make sure that stuff actually gets fixed. Remediation is not optional. It's not something that you can walk away from. We need to do follow-ups. We need to do postmortems. We need to do lessons learned. We need to make sure that everybody understands what just happened and how we're dealing with it and how we're not going to let it happen again. It's interesting to understand that most of the vulnerabilities today are the cheapest off-the-shelf stuff that people can come up with. They're not sitting hours trying to find the latest and greatest, most exotic vuln. They're pulling stuff that's readily available that we already know exists and then popping you with it. We succeed because we don't understand where things are coming from, why they're acting, what they're doing, or who's behind it. Generic approaches aren't ever going to work. Where we can't take a just one-size-fits-all approach to vulnerability management or to mitigation, we really need to have an immediate response to every attack as if it is a unique and beautiful snowflake.
Thank you, John. So, moving on to the second part, true preparation. We need to go ahead and look at what motivates your attacker. Your enemy, your attacker, basically has no rules. I'm not going to read your slide for you, but yeah, they have no rules. So if they have no rules, that's what you're dealing with. I can't actually go ahead and scan a box because it doesn't fit inside the change management window or it's verboten. So if I don't scan my own environment, my attacker definitely sure will. So you need to go ahead and take a look once again at the typical part of the SANS GCIH program, identification. We don't actually spend the time to go ahead and properly identify, fingerprint, and profile our attacker. What we do is we have automated things. We have automated detection that we rely on too much. We set it, we forget it, because this new IPS, this next generation firewall, it's going to take care of everything for us. So
everything.
Yeah, everything. And he already said staffing. So it's pretty bad when you go ahead and find out about your compromise when the authorities come and tell you, oh, we confiscated this list and we were able to log into your things.
Or Krebs blogged about it.
Blacklists, Payspin, and Krebs. What we need to do in the identification phase is at least ask the 5 W's of defense, the who, what, where, when, and why. I don't think we ask the why enough as to what it is that, why am I attacked? What is it that they wanted? What's the asset? So when we go ahead and we have to take immediate action, in the identification phase, we know that we're being attacked. We usually have an IP. We usually have a piece of a log. And just because you have that actual one piece of information doesn't mean you're actually done identifying who just attacked you. We tend to not go ahead and dig and look and see if there are any similar trends. People are not taking the pieces of analysis that they have, like application logs or other pieces of logs. I'm given a single IP, I know that's bad. What else can I find that was related to that actual attacker and that IP? And is there anything similar? I'm not going to be just fixated on the one attack vector. You have to actually expand that and see if there's anything else. I have to go ahead and make sure that I size up my actual attacker. I was talking to someone in DerbyCon here, and the funny thing is yeah, I get scanned millions of times per minute. I was asked by somebody at one time, well, there are 1 million of these bad logs in queue. And I said, but that traffic's been denied, and I already know about them, and they're denied, so they didn't do anything, but you're not looking at those. But they don't matter because I stopped them anyways. So understand that just because you're having millions of events per minute, hour, second, you need to look at the right things. You need to not be afraid to go ahead and actually, you'll get the actual attacker that actually has different IPs, different nets that they're coming through. I need to go ahead and at least figure it out. Sometimes I'll actually use the same user account. I can use an account to go ahead and focus in on. Then I can see all the IPs that that account ever came in from and start correlating them. People just don't connect the dots when they're doing defensive, I have this information. You need to go ahead and do that.
Are you saying we should create a dossier on our attacker?
I'm going to get to that. When you are going ahead and sizing up the attacker, your enemy, you have IP addresses. You need to find out everything about those IPs, because one of the things I'm going to talk about is the possibility of actually striking back and taking a look into this. You can't just go start scanning things. You can't do a whole range. You'd better be surgical. You'd better know exactly what your attacker is doing, map it out, even know what your attacker has as far as a CIDR behind them. Because the last thing I want to go ahead and do is cause an automated or a person to actually go ahead and start DDoSing me off the face of the earth. So you have to go ahead and really understand what's behind everything. So
we would rather poke kitties than poke bears.
All right. Yes, we would. But the whole thing being is, people don't often understand, who's attacking me, what their capabilities are. I'm going to go over the often overlooked. Often overlooked, we don't know what's happening in our own house. We don't know our own physical assets. Every time I've literally come into places where I've had to go ahead and deal with incident response, that was a legacy box. Are you using it for anything? No, we don't use it for... Why is it connected to the internet? We didn't know it was there. So...
Marketing set it up.
Anyways, so the thing being is, you actually have to go ahead and know what your own physical assets are in-house. And if it is one of those boxes, you better understand where it connected to, where it can pivot to, and everything else. Data value. What is actually on that physical asset that just got compromised? Better yet, what subnet was it on? What VLAN was it is? What VLAN was it on, rather? So the difficulty is, okay, we know we've been compromised. What do we do? Well, it just was a box that was a simple web server. Fine. What does it connect to? Stuff. You'd better go ahead and take that investigation and see what backends it's able to connect to, and you'd better go ahead and take a look at your own architecture. So this goes into the connectivity. Can I pivot from it? Was it truly segmented? Because I'll tell you this, every single time I go into a place and I deal with things, we have defense in depth. No, your network's flat. We have defense. You're flat. I'm sorry.
Flat networks are not defense in depth.
They never have been, never will. But I have to often explain to these people after the fact that, no, this connection allows a connection to everything. So now we actually have a problem. This is now a problem. Going into target value. Was I specifically targeted for this? You know, we love to go ahead and talk about APT, but I have to go ahead and find out where the origin of this came from, because I need to know who's doing this. This allows me to understand why. When it's crafted, were they actually clever? Did they leave the USB sticks in the break room? Did they go ahead and actually email someone who's an intern in marketing? Whose machine is it? Where did it originate from? What access do they have? Where did they traverse to, and what access do they have? So not only is it important to do a dossier on your attacker, but it's also important to do a dossier on your own organization, something that we don't do. So we don't know what's actually been compromised because we haven't taken a look there. So after taking a look at that, one thing we fail to do as far as in our organization is talk to people. So we know that we had an AV hit in our SIEM. We know we went ahead and we had a IPS hit and an IDS hit, and it happened on that host. Did anybody bother to go ahead and actually speak to the person whose machine it was? Usually often not. It's like one of the things I want to go ahead and do is when I can find a point of origin. So what happened? Please tell me you didn't delete this email. Look at it. Okay, I have headers. I have an IP. I have this. I have that. Okay, it's calling to this website. Okay, it matches with the IDS, IPS, and all this other stuff that we have, but why isn't that we didn't see it in the SIEM? Because it's a piece of a million hits per whatever hours, seconds, minutes that we've already had. It's just pretty darn hard to go ahead and look at too much, but when you've already been handed your butt, go ahead and talk to the people, look at the machine. We failed to do this. We tend to be high and mighty because we're security. I need to go ahead and just do dead forensics on this. But nobody ever actually asks what happened.
A corollary to that is when you're asking people about what happened and you're talking to these people, the idea, most of the time when we come into it, we come in with a hammer approach and we kind of put them on the defensive. Talking to your end users in a tone to grab the information out of them requires you to take a softer feel to it. Befriend them, come to them with not such an aggressive tone, but really trying to understand, make them feel like they can contribute to the incident as it's going on, rather than the cause of the incident.
And in preparation, we talk about other things like security programs. Once again, he said they spend more in the cafeteria and soda than they do on actual security programs that are meaningful. Because I'll tell you this, every security program I have to do that's interactive and online, sadly, I play it and then I go on my WebEx. It has to actually get you, and it actually has to go mean something. So when you actually do awareness programs, that helps a lot. So let's get to the fun part. Going ahead and taking a look at your attacker, how do I do that? Go ahead and I use regular tools. Depending on what it is that I have access to, RobTex has been awesome. I'm going to show some examples. Unfortunately, I didn't have time to go ahead and scrub out dossiers, but you should be going ahead and using tools to do exactly to what your attacker did to you. Chances are they did the cyber kill chain. And why isn't that you're not actually doing your own reconnaissance? I know who you are. I have an IP address. I know what you're coming from. So tools that I use when I'm dealing with incidents go from RobTech, Spokio, to all the way to using VPNs and scanning people. If you're looking at an ongoing attack and everything's just so messy that their SIEM's not getting meaningful information, bring a network tap with you. I mean, we go from anything from expensive SIEMs to grep-set-awk. I mean, I don't have time for this. I have to go ahead and pull out everything.
What about pen and paper?
Pen and paper. If you're in the middle of an incident and you're actually taking photos, remember, photos are not just memories, they're also evidence. Don't use your own nice new iPhone 6, because if you are taking screenshots and forensic evidence, that became chain of custody and you no longer have your nice iPhone 6 anymore. So I'm a big advocate of using old school pen and paper when you're dealing with an incident. So this is what RobTech will give you. I use these to go ahead and build dossiers.
Gee, that looks familiar.
It's basically our company because I couldn't. It's Accuvant. This is all public information. So you run RobTech, it'll show you an actual graph of IPs and name servers and everything else. So that's all public information. You can just grab that. I can find out if Accuvant were my attacker, I can find out what IPs, what launch points they have, how big they are. Do I want to go ahead and start denying them? Do I want to go ahead and scan them? Do they have a big enough CIDR block? What's their pairing looking like? You can't go ahead and start swinging at folk until you actually can size them up. So we'll move on to from identifying who just hit me to containment. Containment drives me nuts because the first thing they do is it's always, we're going to go ahead and unplug the machine. Fine, but what are you going to do after that? I know you have to get this thing back on, especially if it's commerce related or anything else. So the worst thing is when you actually lose money due to the fact that a machine is down or a site is down. What do they usually do? Let's go ahead and switch to DR. So if you thought you were vulnerable in your production that currently exists, I damn well guarantee you, you have, if not the same vulnerability that they popped you on, probably 4 times more. He says...
Are you saying our DR has not been updated to what our prod is and contains more vulnerabilities than prod?
Yes, I am. So
that never happens.
That's been the whole deal is, oh, we've been hit, but we're losing tons of money. Switch to DR. It's like, so what's the last revision? Are we actually doing hot mirroring? No. It's the last known good. Okay.
So I don't want to see a show of hands, but I know there's one of the few of you out there who have a DR that's at least 1 or 2 reps behind their prod code. So just think about the idea of failing back to DR during an incident. You just gave your attacker 2 more targets.
Actually, more than that. But it's often done. And the thing is if you're going to think this over, make sure that if you have to go ahead and get back in business, that you're actually working with a way to go ahead and patch and get back, because I'd rather go ahead and deal with be offline for a little bit and actually send a patch out and make it work than actually throwing something that's just going to get owned again and even worse. So, other things that drive me nuts. Let's just go ahead and re-image the box and throw it back into production. We didn't understand how the attacker actually got in. So how are you going to stop them? You can't just do that. It takes time to go ahead and actually assess what you're under attack for, but it will be well worth it. Anything worth doing is worth doing right. I get pushback a lot from people, but I've let them go ahead and fail and do it their way. And it's happened that, the exact same thing you said, it happened again. Okay, now it's spread. So if you can, make sure that you do the politics, the buy-in, you update people to go ahead and understand what it is you're actually doing for containment. Oftentimes, during that, after I've identified my attacker, I know what their vector is, I can actually close that. But before I move into containment, I need to go ahead and express it's going to take X amount of hours, and I need to get buy-in from some type of sponsors. One of the things that we don't talk about is, unfortunately, that last OSI layer, the politics layer. We have to go ahead and get people to go ahead and buy in, to go ahead and make sure that we're able to properly go ahead and contain.
We need to breach the layer 8 firewall.
Exactly. So what do we do when we have these pieces of information? Since I'm willing to go ahead and talk to people who actually were attacked within the environment, there's some interesting tactics that I've actually used. If I'm able to go ahead and get a live phishing email, one of the things that I will go ahead and do is create an automated script with at least 150 pieces of information. I want to go ahead and make sure that I have an automated script that's going to go ahead and rip through and post to a website, which is my own live production, and I want to go ahead and type them in one by one. The reason why is I actually need to go ahead and understand, am I dealing with a human on the other side, or is this automated? This is a cheap and easy way to go ahead and find out anything going on when your actual web application's being phished or spear phished or anything else. I will go ahead and try and interact and see how it reacts to my own environment, because you own your own environment. If you're not doing this, that's a bad thing, because you should be able to see it. So you create your own dictionaries of usernames and fake passwords, and you're going to see these people try and log in live. It's even funnier when you go ahead and go get an IRC session, as well as feeding the automated attacks into it. You get to see everything live.
Feeding your attacker's canaries gives you a way to pinpoint your SIMs or any log analysis devices, a given string that you know will show up from the attacker. We're talking about feeding the canary usernames that do not exist in your environment, passwords that do not exist in your environment, and then running it through your log analysis to find where that attack is coming from.
So after assessing them, we've gone ahead and figured out their potential to go ahead and harm us. That's why I say if you're going to go ahead and play this game, you damn well better know who you're going to be up against. You better know all their IP addresses. You better know their CIDR block. You better know what their potential for DDoSing you is. You better know who their friends are, everything else. You need to do your homework. You need to do the OSINT. You need to go ahead and probe the attacker. So I've actually gone ahead and scanned the boxes that actually hit me, because I need to know, is this human or is this automated? Amazingly enough, a simple Nmap scan, noisy scan on something that's actually actively exploiting my environment, I can figure out if the lights are on, if anybody's home. Because if I've scanned their actual point of attack and they know they're actively attacking me, either they stop immediately and retool, or they stop altogether. So don't be afraid to go ahead and strike back. So if you are going to go ahead and do this, this is why I said you better damn well know who you're playing with. So you can go ahead and get direct with them. I've actually gone as far as to email them.
Phone calls are fun.
They can be. So I actually opened a dossier on someone who was attacking me. I had the application logs. I went to their ISP and basically said, hey, Buse guy, I have these logs. I'm going to sanitize them. I'm going to send them to you. They're trying to log on to my infrastructure, and they're doing this every day, and they're doing dictionary attacks, 1,000 usernames and passwords an hour. What do they tell me? Oh, that IP address. I can't do anything about it. They pay me a lot. What?
I prefer ordering pizza.
Yeah, maybe not.
That guy over there is giving us a kill sign.
Well, I'm not done yet. So, an incident occurred in which intellectual property accidentally leaked and got out on the internet. So, what I usually go ahead and do is take that same dossier, put it together, re-roll it, and basically, I'm not actually able to go ahead and show that. End result, they got a very interesting letter. I know where you live. So, lessons learned, immediate action, strike back. You better go ahead and do your intelligence gathering, understand your attacker's skill set, understand the who, what, where, and why. We need to spend more time in lessons learned. And basically, threat intelligence, why are you paying for it? You need to go ahead and check out your own environment. Those of you who are taking pictures of these slides, we're going to post them, and we'll be available. You can buy us drinks.
You
all
are
that
your
good stuff.
best threat intelligence vendor. You have all the information right there that's relevant to your company.
But did you even bother to go ahead and harvest it? Did you look? You need to go ahead and take all that information, re-roll it, re-roll your defenses. If not, you can hire me, I'll do it. Questions? Well, no, that's the drink part, so we should just call it drinks.
We'll be at the bar later for questions. And we out.
And we out.